What's going on, guys? In our last video, we went over how to do the client-side implementation of our follow and unfollow functionality. In this video, we're going to be getting started with the back-end implementation of this and ideally finishing up this feature now before we get on into how we're going to utilize this follow and unfollow structure for things like our user feed. So I have the database open here for the completed application, guys, and we're going to be adding these two structures here. One to keep track of a user's followers and one to keep track of who users follow. So we basically, every time we execute a follow function, right? So if I go and follow a user, we're going to be updating these two structures individually. So for example, if as Batman, who I'm currently logged in as, I go and follow Iron Man, I'm going to go to Batman's following structure and add Iron Man to someone that he follows. And then I'm going to go to Iron Man's followers structure and add Batman as a follower to his list of user followers. And that's ultimately how we're going to get this ability to display a user's followers and who a user is following. And then that is obviously going to help us out with how to update our user's feed, right? So basically, every time you make a post, you want to go and update all of the people who follow you. You want to add that post to their user feed, which is what we're going to be doing with this stuff eventually. So let's just go ahead and hop into Xcode now and get started with this implementation, guys. Let me move this out of the way. So we are going to be writing this code inside of our user service, guys. So let's go to our user service, and we're going to be making an extension on this guy to actually execute this follow and unfollow functionality on the back end. So we're going to make extension on user service. And, you know, some people might advocate for making a separate like follow service, which you could absolutely do. I think it's okay to add this functionality to your user service just because, you know, this is part of user relations, right? So users follow other users. So it could also make sense that you could add this to a user service. At the end of the day, I don't think it really matters. But if you want to get into the weeds of architecture there, you could create a separate sort of follow service for this. But I think this is fine. So let's make a mark here, guys, for following. And we're going to add those same three functions. A function for following, unfollowing, and checking to see if a user is followed. So we're going to follow a particular user ID. It's going to be async throws. Let's just copy this. Unfollow. And check if user is followed. And this needs to return a Boolean variable because every time we execute this check, we need it to give us back true or false so that we can update our user UI accordingly. So here we can just say return false so that error goes away. And this is going to be pretty simple, guys. We're just updating some structures in our database. So basically what I want us to do first is add these follower and following collections to our database. And one more note before we do that, guys, is you could absolutely make these sub collections on your user. I'm just showing you a different way of structuring your data so that you guys can pick whichever one you like best. It's tomato, tomato. It doesn't really matter how you do it. A sub collection on a particular user document versus creating individual collections for these things doesn't really matter because ultimately we have to end up creating a sub collection anyway. I'm just showing you guys a different way of doing things. And like I said, based on the needs of your application or your personal programming style, you can pick which one you like. I always like to give you guys a little bit of variety here. So anyway, let's go to our constants file. And we are going to make a followers and following collection. So I'm going to say static let following collection equal root.collection following. And then let's make a followers collection as well. Followers. Just a note on the spacing here, guys. I'm spacing things out that aren't necessarily related. These two are pretty closely related. So, you know, I typically, when I'm doing the spacing in my code, you know, this is getting really particular with things, but it all, you know, sort of plays into creating clean and professional code here. I group things together that are, you know, make sense to be grouped together, right? So users and posts are completely separate. This is completely separate from those two things. But, you know, they are related closely. So I don't add any spacing between those two things, but that's just getting super picky. I am a stickler for clean code. and for good reason, right? But anyway, let's go back to our user service, guys, and now figure out what we want to do here. So we need our current user ID. And the reason we need that is because we're going to need to go to this current user IDs collection and add, this person to our following list. So to do that, we're just going to say async let underscore equal try await firestore constants or firebase constants dot following collection dot document current UID dot collection user dash following. Make sure you guys match these up correctly. If you're in the following collection, make sure the sub collection you're creating is user following dot document UID dot set data async throws blank document. So we're just adding the list of user IDs here, guys. We don't actually need to set any document data. And let me go ahead and indent all of these things. And we can go ahead and copy and paste this and just change some things around for the next one. So if you guys remember, we have to update the following collection for the currently logged in user, right? Because I just followed someone, so I need to add that to my following list. But then we need to go and look at the person who I just followed and add a follower to their followers list, which is the currently logged in user or the person that just followed them. So here we're going to change this to followers collection. And we're going to say user dash followers, and we're just going to swap UID and current UID. So this is saying, hey, go to the person that we just followed, go to their followers collection and add myself. So basically, guys, what's going to happen is if I am Batman and I go and follow Iron Man, right? It's going to add Iron Man to the list of people that I follow, and it's going to add Batman to the followers list of Iron Man. And the reason we use async let here, guys, is because we want to execute these things concurrently. We don't care that one of them finishes before the other. We just want to fire and forget. So we just execute both of those with async lets. So they go one right after the other. We don't have to wait for this one to finish before this one executes. And that looks good. So then we can copy and paste these two things here and just say delete. Boom. That's as easy as it gets. Oh, we need the current user ID as well. Okay. And then this check if user is followed, guys. We'll do that after we check to make sure that this is working. I just want us to go over the implementation of this now inside of our profile view model, right? So we're just going to execute these functions here. Let's go ahead and figure that out now. So in this follow function, I basically just need to call that user.follow guy. So I can go here and I can just create a task. And let's say try await user service.follow. And it's going to be the user.id. So I'm going to follow, this is the user of the person's profile I'm looking at, right? So this, in this case, this would be Iron Man. So I'm going to say, hey, go follow Iron Man. And it's going to, this function will do its thing. And then we're going to say user.isFollowed equals true. And once again, guys, the order of operations with how you want to do this is up to you. Ideally, while this process is ongoing, you could like replace this follow text with like a loading indicator. We might go over how to do that as a bonus feature and then disable it so that the user can't repeatedly press it. And then we update the UI once that process has completed. So this is just how we're going to leave this for now. Like I said, we might come back and as a bonus feature, add some additional functionality to make this a little bit more more pretty. But for now, that's good. And then, guys, to do this guy, we just say task and do the same thing. Try await user service.unfollow, that this particular user that we're looking at, and user.isFollowed equals false. So everything else should be in place. Now we're just adding this backend layer to this, or this networking layer to this, to update our backend. Let's go ahead and execute these functions and see if our backend updates accordingly and if our UI updates upon completion of that. So back inside of our Firestore guy, I am logged in as Batman. I'm going to go and follow Iron Man. So you guys notice it takes just a second to update, which is totally fine. And if I refresh my page, you guys will see that these two new collections show up, right? So let's just double check our user IDs here. So Iron Man for me is FQSA, and let's see who Batman is. Okay, C89. So we are going to go to followers, and we see that we have Iron Man here, and in his list of user followers, we have added Batman, right? And then in following, we have Batman's here collection here, the list of people that he's following, and we have Iron Man's user ID here. So that is looking really, really good, guys. We have updated this stuff correctly in the database. So our backend structure and implementation is looking good. Now we just need to execute this check if user is followed function so that when I go back to Iron Man's profile, you guys can see here that we want that information to persist. So I'm just going to execute that check if user is followed function and go over how to implement that now. Really quickly though, guys, we need to make this class at main actor. We want to make sure we're updating this user object from the main thread when it gets published. But anyway, let's go ahead and implement this check if user is followed guy. So back in our user service, let's see. So we need to go and look at the currently logged in users following list, right? We need to check the list of people that we follow and see if we find this particular UID. So once again, we're going to need the current user ID. And what we need to say is, okay, here we can just say return false. Then, guys, let's see. This is going to be pretty simple. We're just going to say let, we can say let snapshot equal try await. And I believe we just need this guy, right? Firebase constants, following collection, currently logged in user ID, check who we're following, and then see if that user ID is there. So then we are just going to say return snapshot.exists, guys. Oh, we need to say .get document, sorry. Boom. Okay, so that looks good. Now we just need to figure out where we want to call this function. So basically, guys, we're just going to go back to our profile view model here. And when we initialize this guy, we're going to call that function. And here we can just say task try, or we could say self.user.isFollowed equals user service.check if user is followed and pass in that user ID. And we would just need to say try await here. And that's as easy as it gets. Then we just say check if user is followed here. And let's go ahead and run our code. And we should be able to go back to Iron Man's profile and see that we are following him. So here, boom, that looks amazing. And let's go ahead and unfollow him. Exit out of that, go back, and we see that that is good. Let's kill the app, relaunch it, and make sure that that is persisting there as well. So go here. Iron Man, we're not following him anymore. Do the same thing. So we follow him, we exit, we go back, we see that we're following him. That looks great. Kill the app, launch Instagram again. Go to Iron Man's profile, and boom, guys, we notice that that's persisting there beautifully. So that is going to wrap it up for our back-end implementation of following and unfollowing people, guys. In the next couple videos, we're going to get over how we can actually utilize this stuff. So like populating our user stats with people that we follow and our followers, and then ultimately updating our user feed. So get excited for that, guys. We'll see you there. Peace.